life is a journey, and you learn a lot along the way. I started off on a 100-acre farm in central Ohio, and my grandfather, my Pawpaw, took his life savings from Kentucky and moved up and bought that farm when my dad was just a little boy. And so I had this storytelling mentor, Pawpaw, growing up on this farm that taught me pretty much. I think my next book's going to be everything I need to know in life I think I learned on the farm. Pawpaw taught me how to drive when I was 5, standing between his knees on our old green John Deere tractor, and he had these Pawpaw-isms.
You're listening to the Real Business Connections Network. Real Business Connections Network. Powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC. Subscribe now and check us out at realbusinessconnections.com. Enjoy the show.
Welcome everyone to Learn, Speak, Teach, powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC. If you love to learn, be inspired, and succeed, we're here to speak and teach. I'm your host, Ben Albert. I believe if you're not living, you're dying. If you're not growing, you're withering. And if you're not engaged, you can turn this off right now. Because we here at LST are lifelong learners. And listen, I'm not your guru. I'm an ordinary guy on a journey to learn from the experts. My goal is to host each conversation with a beginner's mindset. Learn and let the experts speak and teach their truths. Join us! Oh yeah, and don't forget to subscribe. This episode is brought to you completely free. Get some stake in the game here. My fee for the show only takes a few moments. If you gain value from the episode, personally share with a friend and explain your favorite part. Bonus points. Please leave us a review on Apple, Google Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to the show. All right, let's get started. I am super excited for our conversation today. A lot of people ask me a simple question. They say, where do you find your guests? How do you find such insightful, incredible guests every single week? And the truth is, I get pitched on a daily basis. I get those cold pitches via email, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think I've ever been pitched and actually brought a guest on, because the way I find my guest is actually bringing people on that are mentoring me, bringing people on that I've learned from on a podcast. And the guest we have today is a massive mentor of mine. As a lot of the listeners know, I've been in sales the better part of 10 years. And there's a lot of information out there. I've been in the, crazy boiler room approach to sales. And when I was starting my business, I was a little bit of lost, and a lot of the strategies I was utilizing wasn't working quite the way I wish it could. And I was in a mentorship group, and our guest today came in on that group, and he was bringing in neuroscience. He was talking about conversations. It seemed super non-salesy. It seemed super natural. And by implementing some of these approaches, I've been able to kick ass. So I'm really humbled to introduce our guest today, Jeff Bloomfield. Jeff, how are you, man?
Hey, buddy. Good, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
I'll give everybody a tiny little bit of context here, then I'll shut the heck up. Jeff Bloomfield is the author of Neuroselling and Story-Based Selling. He is a keynote speaker, a growth expert, a brain enthusiast, host of his own podcast, the Driving Change Podcast, and founder of Braintrust. Not to mention, he is LinkedIn's #1 sales trainer in the world, but he does more than sales. He is changing the world by helping people communicate with more purpose, power, and impact. I like to provide context here, but I presume, Jeff, you didn't just roll out of bed and start changing lives. Walk us through where you started and kind of bring us to where I gave a great bio, right? But it wasn't always easy, right? Who's Jeff Bloomfield? Where'd you get your start?
Yeah, nobody really cares about the bio, right? I think and everybody has this journey. They may not articulate it the same way I do. Life is a journey, and you learn a lot along the way. I started off on a 100-acre farm in central Ohio, and my grandfather, my Pawpaw, took his life savings from Kentucky and moved up and bought that farm when my dad was just a little boy. And so I had this storytelling mentor, Pawpaw, growing up on this farm that taught me pretty much. I think my next book's going to be everything I need to know in life. I think I learned on the farm. Pawpaw taught me how to drive when I was 5, standing between his knees on our old green John Deere tractor. And he had these Pawpaw-isms. Hard work and perseverance, son. That's what's going to always get you ahead in life. Problem solvers rule the world. Platinum rule, which was his version of elevating the golden rule. He said, if you treated people better than they expected you to treat them, not only will it benefit them, it's probably going to benefit you along the way.
Say that again, Jeff. The platinum rule.
Yeah. So the platinum rule was just the next level, right? So the golden rule is treat people the way you want to be treated. And he always had this kind of philosophy was, why don't you treat people better than they expected you to treat them? And if you did that and you lived that kind of life, not only would it be gratifying, to you inherently, but you're going to make such a huge impact on others. And I think, by the way, I didn't realize I wasn't taking notes when I was 8. I better write that down. That's going to be something that has a lot of impact on my life when I'm an adult. But I recognize reflecting back on this time, and the other thing he taught was just how important family matters more than anything else. And he just believed that, the way you treat people along the journey will have direct impact on those who are there for you and your peers and colleagues and people, even classmates, that they're there for a season, but they're ultimately not the ones that are going to be there in the end. So you probably got to treat your family accordingly along the journey. And as I learned these things from him, I didn't realize I was learning from a world-class communicator, because the guy just had an 8th grade education from the coal mines of Kentucky. And yet when he talked in the general store, when I tagged along with him, everybody else fell silent. He didn't have a lot to say, but when he had something to say, he did it in such a way that was so engaging. And it was sometimes through stories, sometimes through analogies, sometimes through using visual aids and props around whatever he had. He was a teacher. And vis-a-vis a mentor to me that you didn't realize I was learning so much from. And so I'll fast forward to the journey. Is on February 2nd, 1982, I got off the school bus to see him like I did every day. And instead of just his green Chevy Silverado, and at the end of the 50-yard long driveway, it was full of cars. And about the time I made my way down that 50-yard long driveway, an ambulance came in. And as they took him out on the stretcher, I didn't know it'd be the last day that I'd ever get to see him alive. He fell into a coma. He had stage 4 lung cancer. And I never knew it. He never told me. He didn't want me to know. So I was devastated. But I knew he wanted me to be the first person in our family to go to college, which, at the time I thought I'll just grow up and run the farm. But he had kind of different aspirations for why he moved the family to Ohio, took that big risk and made that kind of ripple effect in the pond. And so it drove me to want to go to college, to live up to that legacy. I went on to college, ended up in biotech. I got to commercialize a drug for lung cancer, which is what he died of, which I was so just passionate about. But it was along the journey of working in biotech and the training and development that I received. Again, I didn't recognize it was happening, but I was being trained to communicate one way. And it was always counter to how my Pawpaw communicated. And I didn't know why. I just would always lean and gravitate toward communicating the way he did. And I kept getting promoted and nobody could figure it out. They're like, how's the farm kid from Ohio keep getting promoted? Like, tell stories. And they asked me to help launch one of our brain cancer drugs and build the team and go through that whole process. And it was during this time, I'd been on a journey before that, been a little bit of really studying great communicators, trying to understand why some of our salespeople were really effective and others were average when they seemed to be telling the same quote story. Why some leaders were really engaging from the platform and others weren't. Why were some people in our culture more engaging as speakers and communicators and others weren't. So I was kind of in that exploratory phase of why is this? And it was really the brain cancer launch was the impetus for me to study the science behind it and the technology with functional MRI and EEG. And I started to recognize patterns, and we could see patterns in the brain. Initially, I was just looking at it through the blood-brain barrier and cancer. But the more I started looking at it, I started asking neurobiologists and neuroresearchers that worked for us, hey, can we map the brain based on how people are reacting in the moment to information and the environment? And they're like, well, yeah, but why would you want to do that? Like, well, because people communicate for a living and they're responding and reacting to information all the time. And that was the big aha for me, Ben, and the tipping off where I left the company and went 11 years ago to start Braintrust was I had these epiphanies of, man, if we could take some of the science, boil it down into, farm boy stories, right? Boil it down into simplicity for people, not to turn people into neurobiologists, neuroresearchers, or neuroscientists, but show them how the brain works now that we have more information. and then teach them what mattered when it came to building trust, when it came to creating some differentiation, when it came to influencing change, when it came to overcoming change resistance, not just in sales, but in relationships. And that's really where I set, I think my life purpose never was to be in biotech. It probably never was to be in sales or in marketing or in leadership development. It was always to do what I'm doing today. And I owe a lot of that to, not all, a lot of it, almost all of it, to growing up on the farm and having Pawpaw as that first mentor.
You get to live in alignment with your life purpose. You're living in alignment with what Pawpaw taught you, so you're kind of extending his purpose. It's funny, a previous guest, Rachel Jenks, the brand boss, great episode. We'll put that in the show notes. She was talking about how life gives you gifts, but they're not always wrapped the way that you expect them to be. Yeah. And oftentimes we have mentors, but they don't look the way we anticipated. And it sounds like you had a lot of gifts throughout your life and you were doing things properly. What this old farm boy is the top sales rep. What's he doing differently? Well, once you got into the science, what were you just kind of naturally doing right? And I'm curious if you were possibly doing anything wrong and if there was a refining process. What did the science teach you?
Yeah, that was the game changer, Ben, was we've all, any of your guests listening, whether you're working as an individual solopreneur or whether you're working at a company today, you've always had that someone somewhere along the line said, boy, if you could just replicate that person, boy, if I could have 100 Bens, we'd be killing it, right? And yet then when you ask, well, what part of Ben do you want me to replicate? Then there's the head scratch. Like, I'm not, well, I don't know.
The revenue.
That was it, right? They want to replicate the results. But nobody could really codify the behaviors that were leading to the results. And so what I started to see in my own self, and as well as others as I was evaluating them, were a lot of people that were successful had really good intuitive communication skills, but not always intentional. Therefore, they weren't consistent. So even the best communicators, and I like to think I was decent at it, I wasn't doing things consistently. I was doing things intuitively, but not intentionally. So I through trial and error, most good communicators have figured out subconsciously, hey, don't say that. That ticks people off. Or, hey, you should say that because that seems to get people's attention. You're not consciously recognizing it. So your subconscious is feeling it, and then your subconscious starts categorizing it. So you start to repeat it. And then over time, you create those new neural pathways of, okay, well, if I tell my Pawpaw stories, people seem to like me at a different level. There's a humanness to me that they seem to connect with. Well, why? Oh, well, I can codify that now with science and say, okay, there's parts of the brain that are tripwires for either distrust or authenticity, trust, or all the things that, so you can start to define those things. I think that was, for me, the science, Ben, was, and by the way, nobody has this figured out perfectly. Anybody that tells you they understand the brain perfectly, run, because we're learning new things every single day. And the analogy that I like to give is, if I ask the audience, hey, what type of cell phone do you use, device? Most people are going to hold up either an Apple or an Android, right? They're going to hold up one of the other two. And probably half the audience, if they hit their general screen, they're going to see that little red dot that they need their iOS, in my case, updated, because we forget to do that. Mm-hmm. It's the brain's kind of that way. The brain's worked really well for us throughout our lives and our career, but we have new information. There's a software update. And that's what the neuroscience, to me, has taught us. It's a new version of your operating system. And if I can plug you in, I can update your brain at least to the version that we know today. And we know that, 5 years from now, through science and technology, we might need to upgrade you again. But right now, we know a lot more than we ever have.
I love this. So, and all of us have a miraculous brain that probably already has all the stories and all the answers and all the experiences we need to show up better. Let's do a firmware update. Let's say, this is kind of far reaching, but everyone's going to be unique. Everyone's going to have a unique story. So we kind of have to be far reaching. How do I start kind of updating the way I speak, the way I have conversations? It can be in a sales meeting, it can be an investor meeting, or it could just be just showing up in my best self in a leadership role at work. How do I already have the information, right? What do I do with it?
Yeah, and again, not to go overboard on my analogies. I tend to do that sometimes.
Go for it.
If you think of the iPhone or the Android device as your self, your communication self, part of your brain, your apps look different than mine. We might have the same firmware, which is our brain, right? We have the same biology, but the apps that run that biology might be very different, very personalized. And some of them are a benefit to us, and some of them are a waste of time. And so our life's experiences and our beliefs tend to be, apps that we don't use anymore because we found they didn't have a lot of value there, but they're still there. So they're just taking up space, and sometimes they cause clutter. And I think about the brain, and what we've learned is the consistency of the brain, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic background, race, none of that matters when it comes to the biology of the brain. And what we've learned is the brain has really two networks. And Dr. Tony Jack, one of our research partners, he validated this. If for those who might be thinking it sounds familiar with Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, Daniel Kahneman wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. He created the System 1, System 2. Tony Jack validated that, and he calls it the analytical network of the brain and the emotional empathic network of the brain. And though there's lots of very detailed nuance and neuroscience behind both of those networks, essentially what he found and what they've all found, and we validated, is the analytical network's primary job is processing facts, figures, features, benefits, evaluation, comparison, analysis. That's its job. It's the kind of high order processing part of our brain. The emotional empathic network, that's where things like our feelings and emotions and trust and internal visualization, long-term memories, all of those kind of happen there. Meaning to things happen there in the emotional empathic network. And so what we've learned is, this is really fascinating. If nobody takes anything from this entire episode, but what I'm about to say in the next 3 minutes, this is the goal.
Grab the pencil, the pencil.
Yeah, there you go. The goal here is, when we show up in conversations, because our brains are wired for self-preservation, most of our conversations we have, and we communicate from our highest level of training, knowledge, and experience, because we don't want to come across as not credible. So we tap into the things we think we're the smartest about, most knowledgeable about, which tends to be things that are us driven, our agenda. And if we're in sales, it tends to be the things we've been trained the most on, which is our product, facts, figures, features, and benefits. Well, that activates the analytical network of the person receiving the information, which actually triggers evaluation, comparison, analysis, skepticism, judgment, maybe ambivalence at best, which puts me in a defensive posture. And so what we've learned is, you have to bypass the analytical network to activate the emotional empathic network to build things like personal trust, authenticity, honesty, humility, vulnerability, all the things that connect us together as humans that make me subconsciously go, you know what? I think I can trust Ben. I feel a connection to Ben. I feel like he gets me. Once that's established in the brain, that opens up now my analytical network to think about what you're saying through a different lens. I'm still going to have to evaluate, do analysis, evaluation, comparison, all of that. But now I'm starting to look for reasons to support what you're telling me, and almost to want to do business with you. If I go the other way, outside in, I'm going to be naturally inclined biologically to resist what you're saying. And the meaning and the emotion I start to interpret is one of defensiveness and fear. So this idea of inside out versus outside in, it's everything when it comes to positive communication. And when you can really understand that, you can start to recognize, we'll just use sales again, in a prospect meeting, how much of my time that I spend with a prospect, am I just bludgeoning their analytical network in hopes that I can convince them that I'm credible enough and that what I understand is going to help them enough for them to choose my product or service? My guess is it's probably 90% of the time for a lot of average people, average salespeople. The people that are killing it out there, they don't know it, but they're following what we call the emotion coaster. They're tapping into the emotional empathic network to some degree, and then they're only putting out information that activates the analytical network at the appropriate time. They're not doing it intentionally, though. So sometimes they stay way too long in the emotional empathic network, and then I like you, but I'm not going to buy from you. Other times I stay way too long in the analytical network, which makes me defensive. And now you're challenging my status quo, which is telling me that I'm stupid. So it's that balance of great communicators being able to intentionally recognize the order of vacillating between the emotional empathic network in the brain and the analytical network in the brain.
It's powerful. And I'm going to set the stage because I want to get hyper tangible for people, so we can implement something and make some pivots today. Setting the stage, I'll be the actor on the stage because I've done this 1,000 times in the past, and it's part of why I feel like I was in limbo before I started learning from people like you. Is a simple example. So I show up, we're at Braintrust. I know you're in the Cincinnati area. It's like, wow, I love neuroscience too. It's incredible. You've got books. I love to read. In Cincinnati, wow, they almost won the Super Bowl last year. Do you think they're going to win it this year? We have great rapport, and they don't buy from me. Clearly, I did something wrong. What did I do wrong, and how do I not make that mistake again? Let's get applicable of how we can make that shift.
Yeah, one of the biggest myths that we discovered along the way, and again, didn't know how to define it back in my own career, is we believe that rapport building is actually creating genuine, authentic connection because we were trained to believe that. It doesn't. It actually subconsciously, it comes across and it's interpreted as a superficial time delay until you bludgeon me with all your, I call them watches. You open your trench coat, right, to tell me all about your watches. Now, people can do it that way. Some people are just genuinely authentic, and they could come in and say anything, and just between their demeanor, their body language, and just their general nature, people will probably tend to like them. Those people are few and far between, especially considering you have to understand that if you come in and I know you're there to call on me, right? You're a salesperson. I already have you categorized, right? You're there on your agenda to sell me something that I may not want. And that's because my conditioning has already categorized salespeople. And so then when you say, hey, you're from Cincinnati and I am the Bengals and I am neuroscience, and my subconscious brain interprets that as, hey, remember, this is danger. This person is on their agenda. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to put lipstick on this rapport pig and distract you just long enough for you to drop your guard so they can pitch you all their product. That's what's actually happening in my subconscious brain when someone does that. We use the example of, I see you have a picture of a sailboat on the wall. You sail, I drink water. How can I tell you all about my watches? And so what we've learned is,
you sail, I drink water. Can I tell you about my watches?
But that's what happens, right? And that's a very hyperbolic example.
No, I love it.
This is the same exact thing that happens when you meet new people at happy hour. It's the same exact thing that happens when you meet people at a neighbor's Christmas party. It's human interaction. Your brain is constantly processing a couple things. Number one, what category do I put this person in? Can I label them before I've even interacted with them? Can I put a label on them and stick them in a box and say, that person is a friend of a friend, therefore, okay, I have some degree of appreciation and trust for them. That person is a salesperson, therefore I have zero trust in them. Your brain is constantly trying to categorize for safety reasons, right? Our subconscious is wired and built for survival above all else. And then once I think I've categorized you, my brain is looking for information from a confirmation bias standpoint to simply reinforce what I already believe to be true about you. And so in the sales realm, when I communicate with the analytical network using superficial language and things that really aren't on my agenda as the buyer, all it does is reinforce the label that I've already given you, which puts me further into my defense posture. So the way, and I hate to say it this way, it's not the way around this, it's the way to completely diffuse that is, number one, we ask a lot of the people we work with, clients we work with, when you go to have a prospect meeting, before you walk in the door, turn on the camera, whatever the case may be, whose agenda are you truly on? Now, if the answer is, well, I mean, I got a quota, well, you're going to operate from your agenda.
Yeah. If anything, you might be on your boss's agenda. It might not even be what you want in the first place. You're just trying to put money in your pocket to feed your family, and you're on your boss's agenda. It's a whole different point.
Absolutely. And so if you can start to say, okay, am I in this to serve by solving, or am I truly just selling? If you're there selling, you've already lost. Now, some of you can sell and you can do it. You can kind of bludgeon your way through and you're going to get deals, and good on you. My guess is you're probably not building lifelong relationships with clients who actually care about you as much as they think you care about them. When you really want to build a business and you really want to, whether it's a book of business and financial services or a practice you're building as an entrepreneur, and you really want to build something that has some type of legacy value to it, it's through the lifetime relationships of serving customers and solving their problems. And as a result, you sell them something. You don't sell them something and then you get the right to earn that trust. So I say all this to bypass and diffuse that initial conversation. I have to believe that you actually care about what I care about. And I have to believe that I can trust you on a personal level, instinctively. Like, again, my conscious mind is not, it was funny. I just watched my 9-year-old the other day, she dusted off and wanted to watch the Inside Out movie by Disney, where it's all the characters in that. If you've not seen it before, if you're watching out there, listening out there, it's a brilliant adaptation of the emotions inside of our head and how the emotions play a part in every interaction we have. And it strikes me as such that, and not until I'm at ease and I can trust you on a personal level, am I truly going to be open to how you might be able to help me on a professional level. Now, I might figure out that, hey, you've got the only tool. I've got an entire cabinet full of Phillips head screws, and everybody's trying to sell me a flathead screwdriver, and you're the only Phillips head screwdriver salesman on the planet. Now, for those of you who aren't into tools, I guess maybe that may not make sense, but then I'm going to buy from you because you're the only game in town. But I won't like you. I won't trust you. And as soon as somebody else comes along who has a Phillips screwdriver that I like better, I'm switching.
Jeff, the analogy,
I have to trust you personally.
I don't mean to cut you off.
The world of possibility.
I'm cutting you off, and I apologize. The analogy
okay.
I liked.
I'll talk for the whole hour, man.
and I want to let you. I want your opinion on this analogy. I tell people, if you have broccoli that tastes like ice cream cake, you're good to go. But if the listener doesn't have broccoli that tastes like ice cream cake, it sounds like they need to be listening to what you're saying here, because they don't have that super commodity product that no one else has.
Yeah,
and I just said commodity product. That's not the right word for it. That super special product what's the word for that? We'll come back to it.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, not to go down a further path of neuroscience, but you might have broccoli that tastes like ice cream cake. But if my belief system is so inherently built in the junk of my brain trunk, tells me that even the sight of broccoli, there's no way it would ever taste like birthday or taste like cake, I still won't do it.
Interesting.
Because of my fear. My fear is rooted in my experiences that's broccoli.
Your guard's up.
Nothing you can tell me to tell me it's going to taste like cake, outside of holding me down and shoving it in my mouth, which is what I'm trying to do, right? That's the analogy.
Thank you for expanding on it. And I apologize for diving in. I'm like, oh, I have such a great example. I want to dive in. I apologize. So we're making some mistakes here, often non-intentionally.
Always unintentional.
Where do I start? What do you recommend I start? And here's the thing. We'll put it in the show notes. You have the Braintrust Academy. You have Neuroselling, the book. There are lots of ways to learn, but a lot of the listeners are go-getters, and they want to implement something like, literally, they could even turn it off and implement this right now. Well, what can I start changing to avoid some of these holes I'm falling in?
Well, I'll give you a couple really strong tips now. Number one, everybody has to have some form of a personal why story that doesn't make it sound like it's all about them. And so I can tell my Pawpaw story in 30 seconds, right, to a prospect, and it's really about them. But I want them to understand that I'm there, somebody who grew up with these beliefs, and these beliefs came from somewhere genuine and honest, from a mentor who taught me these things, and one of them being that problem solvers rule the world. And if I could help you solve even one problem through my experiences, it'd be worth it for me to do that. And just a little simple story like that softens the playing field, and it has nothing to do with the Bengals or the sailboat picture on the wall. It has everything to do with who you are as a human, where that comes from, and the beliefs that make you someone that I would want to work with, maybe even be friends with. Right, that story is critical. And everybody has one, by the way. Many people out there don't think they do. But once you've built it, and you know this, Ben, from being part of the academy, we've coached probably 10,000 of these now for people. And when they get theirs, it clicks, total game changer. So that's number one. Number two, that one will take longer than hanging up from this call and people going out and executing. But one that they can implement immediately is, what do you know about your prospect? And what I mean is not what you know about them that you want them to know about you. What do you truly know? We call this the prospect story.
Okay.
If you walked in now redo the example where you walked into Braintrust here in Cincinnati and you're calling. By the way, this has happened before.
I didn't do it though. I didn't do it.
No, this wasn't you. This wasn't you.
Yeah.
And you happened to catch me here, and you happened to catch me walking down the hall, and I didn't avoid you because I knew you were a salesperson. Because normally I just want you to give me your manager's card, and we'll call your manager as a lead because you're so bad at selling. Most of the salespeople that come in here. What if instead, when you sat down with me, you said, "Hey, you know what? I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are in scale mode in their businesses, who have a professional services company." And they've got a really unique IP like you did with your book and with neuroselling. By the way, I saw it's amazing the work you've done there. And what I recognize is some of the three biggest goals an entrepreneur has is, how do you find the right customers faster? How do you get more of them? And how do you get more share of wallet from the ones that you'll be able to serve? When you think about top line growth within Braintrust, how does that align with some of the top three goals maybe you have in mind? So I just made that up on the fly, by the way. What you just did to me, though, was you said nothing about you.
Yeah.
You said nothing about what you sell. You told me a story about me, and you showed me that you did a little research. You recognize that in my space, here's probably what I'm trying to accomplish from a business growth standpoint. At a general level, you didn't have to get in the weeds. You just, at a general level, said, I would bet the CEO of a professional services training and coaching company who's growing probably are looking at these three things as goals. And then when I said, yeah, hey, these are my goals, I'm probably going to participate in that Q&A because it's about something I care about. So then I can introduce problems that might be preventing me from getting there that you can solve. And that starts to change the dynamic of the conversation. So the assignment for the listeners is, don't think that you have 75 different variations of how unique your prospects are. You probably are selling the wrong thing if that's the case. You probably have 3 or 4 tops, general personas of people that you call on. What's their story at a high level? What are the top 3, 4 goals that they are trying to accomplish with their business? Not with what you want to help them with, but with their business, with their role. How do they define those goals? How do they articulate them? How do they measure them? And then what are the 2 or 3 challenges you believe are probably more than likely preventing them or could prevent them from getting there that downstream you can help them solve? And I think when you can tell me that story and then ask questions around that story, why would I not want to participate? Because it's about me. It's about what I care about. That's the big aha. And we see that very seldom executed in the clients that we work with, even people who've been doing sales for 20, 30 years.
This is fantastic. Guys, it is in the show notes if you need to rewind, but we have homework. What are these problems? Do you suggest, should I be doing research? Like, how do you crafted that story on the spot. Give us a little more clarity of how to craft that story. So I do a little research, I write down the problems, and I don't just spit out, hey, Jeff, I think you probably have this, and this problem, right?
No. And let me back up a step because people tend to overlook this one as well.
Please.
I have these kind of moments when I do keynotes where these lightning bolt moments where I feel like I need a visual experiential teaching moment. This happened, I don't know, maybe a year ago. I was in this ballroom. I know there's probably 500 people in this ballroom, and we were talking about this story. And someone asked a question. We had a little Q&A, and I could tell people didn't quite get where I was coming from. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want everybody, picture they were in this big ballroom, everybody sitting in rounds. I said, everybody tear a piece of paper out from their tablet. So they all tore a piece of paper out from their tablet. So everybody wad it up into a ball. They all wadded it up into a ball. And I said, okay, on the count of 3, no questions. On the count of 3, hit the target. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Most of the people froze. And then I said, go. And then people started just zipping paper balls in all different directions all over the ballroom. And there's all this noise and there was all this laughter. And then I just said, what happened? What happened? Did anybody hit the target? And then, of course, the person yells out, we didn't know what the target was. And I said, let's go revisit the prospect story again. Problems come later. Until you can identify what my target is as a prospect. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? That's the goal. We all have goals. Like, we're trying to double our revenue again at Braintrust. We've done it 2 years in a row. That's our goal, right? Our goal is to keep doubling. That is a revenue goal. We have goals with staffing. We have goals for different things. And by the way, the people you call on all have very similar general goals, probably tied to some type of revenue or efficiency, or depending on what the industry is you're trying to do. That's true north. That's the top of the mountain. The minute you tell me a story about the top of the mountain, even if you're wrong, I will correct you and tell you what my goals are. This is what's so important. Now you've set the target, right? Now we both have a target. I understand your target. You've articulated your target. Now I can talk about problems. See, if I just jump into problems, I'm still probably going to activate some defense mechanisms. But if we clarify the goals and we recognize how you define them and talk about them and quantify them and all that, then I start talking about problems. Your anchor in your brain is juxtaposing the problem against the goals we just talked about that you told me you have. So it just changes the brain literally in the chemistry that gets produced, as well as the network that's processing. So it's goals first, goals and objectives, then problems and challenges. So here's, you ask, what can they do? Get out a piece of paper. Don't wad it into a ball. Different exercise. Right at the top of this piece of paper, your ideal prospect. Let's say it's VP of sales. Say it's a VP of sales and whatever company they're at. By the way, they're going to be a VP of sales is a VP of sales is a VP of sales. I promise you, across the industries, VPs of sales have almost the exact same goals. So then write it now draw a line, the length of that or width of that paper, and make a T-chart. On the left, you're going to write down the top 5 goals you think that person has. Not the things you want them to have, the goals, what they're trying to accomplish. What at the end of the day in their business would make them look like a hero because they've helped accomplish it. What are those goals? And then on the other side of the T-chart, what's the number one biggest problem preventing that biggest goal? And guess what? You don't have to be right. You just have to be prepared.
Yeah.
So if I tell you the biggest problem to you accomplishing your revenue goals is that your salespeople don't know how to differentiate themselves, and that therefore they keep commoditizing your product or service just to get the business, you may disagree with me, but you're not going to disagree with me without correcting me. And then once you've corrected me, you've told me your biggest problem. And now we can keep going. But see, now I'm letting you're feeling like you're controlling the narrative as a prospect. So I'm giving you a story, asking you to react, giving you a problem, asking you to react, as opposed to just throwing stuff out there and trying to see if it sticks. And then hopes that I can get your attention enough to go, oh, okay, you said you had that problem. Let me tell you about this pen, because this pen will solve that problem in a second. That's what we tend to do, right? We go Wolf of Wall Street on the wrong direction. I don't know if that helps or not. That's a little assignment for everybody.
It absolutely helps. And it's funny because I was envisioning this question. I was imagining like I sit down, I tell this, story about my customer, and they just jump up. You're so right, Ben. And they give me a high five and we just dance into the moonlight. That might not always happen. And my question was answered there. So you're saying even if I get it wrong and we don't high five and go dancing into the moonlight, they'll just correct me and continue the conversation?
100%. And sometimes it's even better if it does go that way.
Like, oh, no. Let me tell you what it actually is.
Yes. And they feel even more empowered and in control because they got to correct, the stupid salesperson. And I think that there's a cognitive bias effect to that, right? That choice supportive bias, that idea that I feel like you're not telling me I'm wrong or stupid. You're just trying to clarify. And you come across like a true consultative advisor because you've done enough homework to at least attempt to tell me what someone in my role at this company in this industry tends to try to accomplish. And then here's some insight, by the way. We coach our folks, don't bring up a problem without a piece of insight attached to it, because then it's your opinion. I might agree that's a problem, but if I tell you that McKinsey did a survey of 1,000 VPs of sales, and here's the number one primary problem that they said they were having in this economy, I just introduced the problem through the eyes of McKinsey. And they can disagree that it's not their problem, but they can't disagree that it's not a problem. That's the other really tip. That's the pro tip there, is when you introduce a problem, always do so with insights, not opinion.
Jeff, I was about to say, I've learned a lot of this stuff in the academy, but for people that want to learn more, I'd love to honestly sit down for 4 hours and go through every minute detail, because that's how my brain works. That's who I am, but we don't have time for that. Where do people like me, anyone who wants to engage, it can be as simple as you're a LinkedIn trainer. They maybe want to connect with you on LinkedIn and just make a friend. How do you recommend people get in touch with you, learn more?
Yeah, they can go to our corporate site is braintrustgrowth.com. They can go to my speaking site, jeffbloomfield.com. And I got videos on there. They can hear me teach on a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of recorded keynotes that are on there. They can go to if they're an individual who just want to learn on an individual level with a group of other individuals, they can go to the Braintrust Academy. It's just braintrustacademy.com, which is what you're a part of, that group. And if they're a company and they say, look, I'm a VP of sales and I need this in my organization, then go to that braintrustgrowth.com, and that shows our full suite of programs that we do with, $1 billion plus companies. That's probably the best ways to learn. Honestly, the simplest way is go get Neuroselling. Go get the book and read it. It gives a little bit of the science and a lot of the application. And then after that, then jump into the academy, right? If you want to get some of that tutorial and have access to being able to apply it.
Fantastic. And it's always in the show notes, clickable, guys. It's in the description on the YouTube. That's a great point. So I can read the book and get into the application, or I could dive right into application. It really depends on my learning style. I wanted to ensure we brought that up because I did want to transition before we close out a little bit, just because I'm super curious. And from speaking with you, I see that you're very visionary, you're very futuristic. And let me think about how I want to phrase this. I kind of like the concept of what would Pawpaw do. And given the current climate, I mean, we're kind of still in COVID. It's not completely behind us in any regards. And there's commotion, this or that. Just what's your opinion of the current climate of the state of the world or business today? And if it's possible, I like that lens of what would Pawpaw do?
Yeah, what would Pawpaw do? That's true. He'd probably, yeah, that's a great question. I think today, what's happening today in our culture and society, regardless of where you live in the world, it's only reinforced the science that we've been able to uncover. And it's that human beings are wired for self-preservation. And those who control the narrative can manipulate that biology to their own good and not necessarily for the good of others. And from our government officials and leaders to the politicians to some of our corporate leaders today, I think many people are either intentionally or inadvertently taking advantage of some of that biology and psychology, and they're manipulating people using fear as a weapon to basically get their own agendas put forth. And it's at first it was just kind of soul-crushingly disheartening to me as someone who cares deeply about other people, and now I'm just irritated. and so I want us to see as humans, what's the responsibility we have for other humans? And how do we start to move toward the place of, we know that self-preservation is activated. We know that people will let fear rule the day. We know that groupthink can paralyze a culture and a society. But we also have to recognize that there's people that don't necessarily have other people's best interests at heart in positions of power today that probably should not be. So this isn't a political activist position. This is a human position. Can we not get some leaders today in power that actually have kindness and empathy and aren't in it for their own good. Because until we do that, Ben, we're going to keep spiraling. Our culture and society are going to keep spiraling downhill. And from the media to the government officials to business leaders today, they're going to then continue to communicate in a way that's self-serving by manipulating complete populations through fear. And it absolutely frustrates the life out of me.
It is frustrating. And I'm happy we made this pivot. I didn't know where we'd go with it. I'm wondering possibly if I'm assuming a lot of us want to be part of the solution. What do you recommend we do?
Yeah, it's a question I've been asking myself. Like, what responsibility do we have as individuals and then those who have a voice? And I think what's hard is, a lot of people that I talk to a lot of people that have either been on my podcast or people that I know that are on the speaking circuit that have a big platform, and they're afraid of being canceled. And so they're afraid to speak up and speak out, similar to what I just did, because they're afraid they're going to get shut down. And so I don't know the answer. I'm just going to be vulnerable with you. And
yes,
I'm processing through that myself because I feel a bit of a responsibility. Not that I have a ton of influence, but I have more than the average person. And so what can we do? What can we do to get people to get encouraged to speak up, speak out, and there's more people that believe like you and I believe, Ben, than don't. That we're here to help serve the greater good, and we're here to help serve our human brothers and sisters in a way that's meaningful and purpose-driven. But we're not speaking out, and people are afraid to. So I don't have the answer, but just know that we may have to come back and do another episode as I'm exploring that very question right now myself.
I won't say no to that. That sounds like an incredible part two. For the listener, if you believe you have an answer, you can help us move that needle, send us a freaking DM. Yeah. I want to know what your thoughts are, because I don't have the answer either. I have great questions, and I find questions unravel nuanced truths, but the implementation can be complicated. We need each other.
Yeah, and I think there's a value to honestly running for some local offices in your community and making a difference, whether it be county commissioners to school boards. I think having a voice there is meaningful for those of us who happen to run businesses. Like the first thing I'm doing is I'm trying to win at home, so to speak. Like I'm trying to set the right culture in our company and the impact we have here in our community, and try to be a voice just with the families that we can influence in a positive way. So I think we can all do something in our circle that doesn't have a lot of risk associated with it. And then collectively, I think maybe we'll start to build upon that to where it can rise up, and then we can have a bigger impact in a more broader sense.
Love it. Jeff, vulnerably, I have a bad habit of getting so deep in the trees, hanging from the trees, that we forget to do the rapid fire round at the end. So we're going to have to do a part two. We're going to dive right into the rapid fire round because I've gotten complaints when I forget to do it because we just get so deep into it. These are short, easy, either or, fill in the blank, honestly answer whatever you want. The points don't matter. We just want to be quick and succinct. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Wait, I got to get myself locked in here. Okay, ready. Coffee.
Cats or dogs?
Oh, dogs, without a question.
Are you a morning person?
Evening.
And so favorite time of year, considering you're kind of northeast area?
Summertime.
Let's slow down a little bit.
Fast. Okay, carry on.
You can't say Pawpaw. Who's your hero?
Why can't I say Pawpaw?
That's a good, I'm an asshole for saying that.
I mean, what are we doing here, Ben?
I have a cheat sheet of potential questions, and I love that one, and then I answered it as I was saying it. I apologize. So skip that one, and we'll sidestep that one. So if we were to take a fictional character.
Einstein.
Let me get a why.
I love the way he thinks.
Hey, Einstein's not fictional, but I still like it.
Oh, you said fictional, didn't you? Okay.
I did.
Sorry.
But let's go with it. We both failed the rapid fire round.
Yeah, I don't listen very well either. Active listening. Ask me which skill I need to work on more. Active listening. Non-fictional, I would say Einstein for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, people use his name now when they think someone's smart, they call them Einstein. It wasn't just his thinking that I appreciated the most. It was how he communicated his ideas. He was a really effective communicator of really high-level intellectual ideas with simplicity. That's why I love the guy.
Love it. We'll do one
Fictional
more.
character. I got to get to the fictional one.
Please do. Yes.
Oh, fictional. I don't know. I'm kind of on a Ted Lasso kick right now. Does that count as fictional as an actor that's in a show?
Absolutely. Give us the wide Ted.
I think why Ted is because he's got such a great 360-degree view of humanity. He deals with his own junk, but his true position of authenticity really is positive motivation of those around him, even though he hasn't had the perfect situation behind the scenes. So I just love the dynamics of his character.
Love it. We'll close out with a home run. What are you working on now? Like, what is lighting you up, bringing you joy, and possibly how can we support you in whatever you're building?
Yeah, Dr. Dan Doherty, the president here now, and I are in the process of co-writing neuro coaching. And so that's one of our big initiatives to close out this year and launch into next year. We've already started loading it into the academy, by the way, some of the neuro coaching courses. For those out there who have responsibility for developing others, we've taken a lot of these same principles of science and communication and applied it into the coaching conversation. And I'm really excited about that. So that'll be coming out soon, the book, as well as more to come on the programming on that.
Jeff, thanks again. A lot of listeners don't know this has been like a year overdue. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm blessed to have you here today. Hopefully we'll do a round two. We'll get a little deeper. Absolutely. Honored to be on, buddy. Thank you. Thanks, man. Thanks again for listening to Learn, Speak, Teach, powered by Balbert Marketing, LLC. You need to go subscribe if you haven't yet. This show is completely free. If you gain value from the episode, personally share with a friend and explain your favorite part. Leave us a review on Apple, Google Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to the show. All right. Thanks once more for listening to LST. I am so grateful. Talk to you soon.